For all of Assassin's Creed Unity's posturing as a next-gen, connected online experience, it still remains just as entrenched in its own history, for good and for ill. After last year's well-received pirate-themed Black Flag, Unity sees the series heading back to its land-faring roots. There are no open seas to sail, no buried treasure to hunt for, and at first blush, Paris seems much smaller than any other game in the series. But what Unity trades for in size, it more than makes up for in density, and one quick glance at the map will tell you that there's going to be plenty to do here. As long as you're a fan of side content, that is. Unity's narrative is the most threadbare the series has ever been, following Arnaud Dorian, a young Parisian noble whose father has been mysteriously murdered. A kind benefactor named de la Serre takes him in, and all seems to be going well for the brash Arnaud, until de la Serre ends up murdered too. It turns out both of these men were fighting on opposite sides of a centuries-long struggle between Assassin and Templar, and you're caught in the middle. Arnaud doesn't give a crap about this fight. He wants vengeance against the man who killed his surrogate father, not to mention the father of the woman Arnaud is in love with. That's right, your girlfriend Elise is a Templar, and you find yourself on opposite sides, yet working toward the same goal. There's definitely some shades of Romeo and Juliet being displayed here, and the concept sounds interesting enough on paper, but it lacks any real depth in its execution. There are twists and turns, but it's all very predictable, like the writers were filling out a Shakespearean tragedy Mad Lib. The structure certainly doesn't help, as each sequence is made up of 2 or 3 missions total. This hardly lets the story have the kind of breathing room seen by prior games in the series, and the narrative suffers because of it. Add to that the fact that many of the historical figures come and go without any real purpose, and you have a recipe for one of the weakest stories in the franchise. But it's not just Arnaud's story. You're also digging through Abstergo's latest video game console, known as the Helix, to find out any information you can regarding the Sages, a mysterious group of people with unheard-of powers. It's a neat idea that lets you explore beyond the confines of the default program, but ultimately it goes absolutely nowhere. The modern-day storyline of Unity might as well have ended with a giant congratulations splash screen. That's not to say the game itself isn't fun, and there's certainly a lot to like if you're already on board with its brand of stealth gameplay. This time around, though, you have access to a proper stealth button, and pulling the left trigger will cause you to crouch down and silently stalk from cover to cover. You even have the ability to hold a button down while you run, or to more easily climb walls or descend from rooftops. It takes some getting used to, but being able to simply hold a button and deftly maneuver from a tall spire to solid ground is fantastic, and I never want to go back. These are, quite simply, the best controls this series has ever seen. That doesn't mean they're great, though, and the series' trademark jagginess is still in full effect. There will be numerous times when your forward momentum is halted by a seemingly missing outcropping, or where Arnaud will run up an errant box when you meant for him to go up the wall, or when you'll jump to your doom when all you really want to do is climb, or where you'll get spotted because Arnaud stubbornly wouldn't cling to cover, or, well, you get the idea. But any percent of the time, the controls work perfectly are overshadowed by the 10% of the time they don't, and having your perfect run completely botched because Arnaud bobbed when he should have weaved will always sting. The jank extends to Unity's ability to even function as a game, as it's riddled with bugs and other graphical glitches. Between Ron and I, we've fallen through the floor no less than 4 times. The frame rate is somewhere between inconsistent and abysmal. And worst of all, the crowds, while impressive just in the sheer amount of people that the game can jam onto the screen, are some of the weirdest looking dimension hoppers ever. They blink in and out of existence, changing shape, clothing styles, and color, or even gender as you walk toward and through these masses of bodies. Functionally, they work fine as another means of blending unseen, but it's so jarring to see the crowds look so poorly, especially when other parts of the game look so damn good, and especially when Unity hangs so much of what makes itself special on these enormous groups of people. I feel like I'm riding the hate train here with Unity, but there are lots of parts I genuinely like about it. Combat is far more difficult, and parrying is no longer the one-size-fits-all solution it once was. Missions are also much more open, featuring multiple pathways and side objectives to pursue, making Unity feel almost Hitman-like in its execution. These open levels are perfect for the kind of cooperative missions that Unity brings to the table, though it's not as integral to the experience as the marketing would lead you to suggest. When you bring up to 3 others into your game, you essentially have a handful of special co-op missions and heists to take part in. Running around France with a buddy or two is actually a lot more fun than I thought it would be, and being able to coordinate strikes with another player never gets old. There are only a dozen or so co-op missions though, and your mileage playing online will be determined by how much fun you'll have playing the same handful of levels over and over again. Ultimately, Assassin's Creed Unity is a good Assassin's Creed game that could have been so much greater. It's ambitious in its scope, and the series is still second to none as a historical playground. But its technical shortcomings and its surface-level narrative have left me wanting. Unity looks forward in many ways. Maybe it's time to stop looking back so much.